Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. You can find the links to all of our social media outlets in the description to every single ThunderCast episode, including a link to thundercast.online, which currently has a really useful transfer portal tracker that Russ has been keeping tabs on. For all of you folks that think there's a lot of movement, you're right. There's a lot of movement. But also, ThunderCast is proud members of the College Huddle Podcasting Network. Find them at thecollegehuddle.com. Russ, it was a very, very, very busy week in herd athletics from a coaching standpoint, several coaching standpoints. We're going to talk about all that. We got some championships that are on the horizon. So we might as well get going with a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
Yeah, if you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
Well, now that the particulars are out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff. How about you give me, I'm going to take a stab at it. Give me 8 things that every herd fan needs to know this week.
How about 32 things? No, I'm just... We this week have 7 things every herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by IgniteLink, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, Julie Fulks' coaching staff has been put together. We have Stephanie Gelhausen, Sasha Santamano, and Mikasa Robinson.
Yeah, all 3 announced on the same day. The whole staff came together. It was a little surprising. Hadn't really heard anything out of the women's basketball program since the announcement of Coach Fulks. I mean, she'd been making the rounds, first pitch at baseball, first pitch at softball, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, it was bam, bam, bam. And the entire staff was announced, and you're thinking, well, all right. And then a little momentum, something we will probably talk about here in a little bit, but the first commit to Marshall women's basketball in the Julie Fulks era occurred. So now we were starting to see some steam coming out of Huntington, West Virginia, as we go into the Julie Fulks era for herd women's basketball.
Yeah, so the first thing that leaps out at you is one of these. Robinson is an Ashland, Kentucky native, went on to be a all-time player at Louisville. What was she known for? Well, she was known for defense, which is a theme amongst every single coach that we have on here. Keep in mind that Jolie Fulks' team, I want to say it was 44 points a game or something that they gave up last year, by far first in the nation in their division. And that was a theme with each and every one of these coaches. They are known for their defensive coaching. They are known for their teams and their recruits for playing amazing tight defense. So it's going to be good to see what they bring to the table. Keep in mind, last year it was offense is what comes in your mind. But we also led at least the Sun Belt, but really high in the country in steals and forced turnovers and things like that. So it might not be too big of a change. Just kind of maybe a different overall philosophy about how many shots we put up and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that was by design, obviously, because if it's not broke, you don't want to necessarily fix it. Of course, you have to repair it because the architect of that system has moved on, as has the assistant coaching staff. So you go out and you find someone that's in the same realm that you can take advantage of some of the players that are currently on the roster. And, you know, you bring in a coach that plays another exciting brand of basketball, that plays a smothering defense type of basketball. Marshall was really hung their hat on, like you said, turnover margin and creating turnovers. So it's not just about the margin, but it's also the gross number of turnovers that you can create. And of course, we've heard Coach Kim and many of the players say it was about how many shots we could get up.
Right.
You know, we knew that if we could get up enough shots that we could ultimately win a lot of basketball games. And you're right, it might not be exactly the same philosophy, but I don't care what your philosophy is. If you can win the turnover battle, which is kind of equates across all sports, you really increase your chances of winning a game, no matter what sport it is. So I think that's what we're seeing here a little bit. Now we're going to score some points. We're going to score some points. I think we're still going to run the floor. You know, Coach Fulks doesn't go 93-7 by accident over her last 100 games. So this is not by accident that these pieces are falling into place. There's some head coaching experience that was brought over to be an assistant here now at Marshall. You talk about all-time players at high-performing historic programs. Like there is now really, like I said in the lead-in, momentum. You know, it was kind of like a big announcement, new coach, and then it got quiet for a minute. And now the staff announcement, starting to see some recruiting visits. We're starting to see some commitments. We're starting to see some other stuff that I want to talk about too. But there's starting to be some more excitement and momentum around Herd women's basketball.
Well, let's keep with that energy and go to number two. Our number two thing is Meredith Mayer, Aislinn Hayes, and Alasia Hayes all opt out of the transfer portal and will be staying with the Herd for women's basketball.
Bang. And that was the other thing that I wanted to talk about. It wasn't just naming coaches and high school recruiting. Three big pieces to this Marshall women's basketball team. Primarily, the news of Aislinn Hayes coming out and returning to Marshall was big. That was big. Meredith Mayer coming out and returning to Marshall, equally as big. And Alasia Hayes could play that pivotal role, you know, see those minutes go up. Was a contributor last year, but now familiarity in the system, how they do things at Marshall, complementing what her sister and Meredith do. This is big for Marshall basketball. All three of these pieces deciding to withdraw from the transfer portal and come back only makes Marshall stronger, without a doubt. Because if you were thinking about having to already replace the players that were exhausting eligibility, i.e. Abby Beeman and Brianna Campbell, you're like, wow, that's two huge weapons to replace. And now you're thinking, oh, okay, well, you're going to have to replace Aislinn Hayes and Meredith Mayer, two pivotal players for Marshall last season, and three more overall. I'll take it. And I think every Herd fan will take it. This is a huge boon for the Herd in being far more competitive this coming season.
Yeah, so let me take it one little step closer on this idea here. Two players got thrust into the starting position that weren't starters at the beginning of the year, Mayer and Aislinn Hayes. Aislinn Hayes took over for Rashala Scott when she was off the team after the first 6 games. And then when Mahogany Matthews, Meredith Mayer had already been spot starting here and there, one of the key contributors, but she stood in as that forward position. And you saw what she did at the end of the year, especially when it came tournament time, you know, how well she was doing. But Aislinn Hayes, Alasia Hayes had the NCAA clearinghouse that she had to get through and didn't get to start the beginning of the year. They were on the road trip. I think it was right before they played Wake Forest, but that is when we really took off as a team. We had that depth that she got to add, and she was kind of picking up steam. Now you're talking about possibly that she would be that sixth man or sixth woman and then thrust into the starting spot. You know, you never know. But these are three major pieces, especially since we lost Mahogany Matthews. We know that she transferred in conference. We lost Abby Beeman and Campbell both to graduation. And we lost Sydney Scott. I'm blanking on where she went. It was just announced.
Fairfield, I think.
I think so. So we are looking at replacing a lot of starters. Here's 2 of them that are coming back now. 40% of your starters are back when it was looking like you were going to have to replace all 5. And then you've got a key piece off the bench that was not here for the full season last year. So excellent, excellent pickups. This is better, in my opinion, than bringing someone in from a transfer portal situation, because you know the game that they have. They already know other teammates that are on here, so they know playing styles and how they mesh together. And they already know the town. You don't have a learning curve of having to come here and figure things out that every student athlete already has to do. They don't have to figure out where they go on campus. They don't have to figure out where they're going and what time's this and what time's that. They've already got it down pat.
Yeah. So let's just talk about what comes back just from a production standpoint. Meredith Mayer, even though the scoring average seems low at just over 7 points per game, well, we know that's across 33 total games, and the minutes weren't there in as abundance in the beginning as they were at the end. So that number's a little bit misleading. But the one that should jump off the page to you is nearly 39% from behind the arc on the season. And that is really what you can extrapolate if you, take that across the season, or you get more minutes per game early in the season, hitting nearly 40% of your threes. And Aislinn Hayes was nearly 39% from behind the arc as well. She was a 14.5-point scorer for Marshall across 32 games last year. So very, very, very high production numbers, particularly, like you said, in the end, towards the latter third, tournament time, that type of thing, when their roles were really in full swing. No way around it. 2 huge pieces. Now, Alasia Hayes across the season, just 2 points per game, but you mentioned clearinghouse issue, didn't really work into the rotation until later in the year. So if you're talking about gross number of games, those averages are getting killed because, well, you just had to find your way into the rotation. But still, nearly 34% from behind the arc, a 31% shooter from the floor for Alasia. Meredith was a 42% shooter from the floor, as was Aislinn. So this is a lot of scoring potential here that returns for Marshall. I think Coach Fulks will gladly accept 24 points per game from these 3 players, knowing that those numbers are probably going to go up as a total for all 3. This is probably a trio that should easily account for 30 to 35 points per game across a season. That's a huge number when you're talking about a first-year coach trying to put together a really competitive roster to repeat the success from this year's team.
Yeah. All right. So, number 3, we're going to keep it with basketball. But this thing is one of those, there's a lot of smoke. There has not been an official statement come out yet, but from everything that we have heard, Rob Fulford has joined the coaching staff for men's basketball.
Yeah, let's put that out there again. A pure speculation at this point. A lot of smoke. No official announcements, but you can connect some dots to where it makes sense, right? Primary dot that you can connect is Michael Dawson, right? Played for Fulford at Akron. Of course, Fulford is no stranger to Huntington, West Virginia. Long-time Huntington guy, heavily involved in AAU circuits for a long time. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the first coach ever at Huntington Prep, I think he was the first one. So if anybody knows Huntington basketball, regional AAU basketball, and recruiting at a high level to this region, it's Rob Fulford. So if indeed the speculation is true and Coach Fulford finds himself back in Huntington, I think that's a huge win for Marshall men's basketball. This guy has been all over. He's been on some pretty high major staffs for his career, and he's always had a reputation of being pretty much an ace recruiter. So to get a guy that has the type of familiarity with this region and all of the benefits and pitfalls that go along with being in this region, I just think it's big for Coach Jackson to make that type of addition to the staff. And if it is indeed true, you get instant benefit because you recruit one of your players right back to his hometown team as well. I love it if it's true. I wish I could put a stamp on it and say we know it's true, but even if we know it to be 100% true, we still wait for the announcement to come out before we call it true. But I'll take it. I'll take the good news. I think it's a great move, and I sure do hope that we see something sooner rather than later about an official announcement.
Number 4 is indicative of what you just said, because we waited and waited and waited to make this a thing, but since it's official, Henry Baker is officially announced as cornerbacks coach on the football team.
Yeah.
Originally happened January to February ish, and we didn't report on it until now because it's now official.
Yeah, and of course we know these things. It takes time, logistics. It's not just rumor stuff. It's logistics, because this is people's lives. Things have to, dates have to be met, deadlines have to be met, all this kind of stuff. And I saw some folks on the social media that were seeing that for the first time, and I'm thinking, hey, you could have been listening to the ThunderCast and you would have known this way back when. But that's okay. You do you, right? But yes, this is officially official. Replaces Chevis Jackson, who moved on to the U, which is turned into Marshall football coaching staff South now, with, at least 3 off the top of my head that I can think of, that former Marshall coaches that are down there. Henry Baker he comes highly regarded, has placed DBs in the NFL very, very recently. And you know what? So has Marshall. So I think this is a mutually beneficial scenario. We've got 3 that we've placed in the NFL in the past couple of years, past 2 to 3 years. So bringing in a coach that has a history and a pedigree of putting guys in the NFL, that's coming to a place that's got a really recent history of putting guys in the NFL from the secondary, you got to love it. There's no two ways about it. You got to like what's happening there with the Herd secondary. Let's just see if we can keep it rolling. There's a great crop of young DBs that we talked about last season that are still on the roster. Still. We've taken some hits from that in that position, in those positions, but the cupboard at those particular positions, corner and safety, are by no means bare. There's a lot of talent there that is still currently on the roster. I love the fit. I think it's going to be great for the Herd in 2024.
Number 5 that we still have coaching news that we're talking about here. I sense a theme. Heather Stout and Caitlin Gaylor have been named assistant coaches for volleyball.
Yep, good for Caitlin. She was, I don't know what GA or something maybe last year, but to get elevated to full-time assistant coach now?
It was a slightly different kind of like player development.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But I mean, it was a specific title, but it's a lot like a GA position, but it was a paid,
right. Yeah, so it's probably something I can't remember, and you have to forgive me, but it was, yes, I know what you're saying, like director of player personnel or something like that. Something, yeah. So, but good for her for landing on the staff as a full-time assistant now. Of course, when your greats do well and then they get an opportunity to begin or even extend now, elevate your coaching career with your team. I love seeing that. I absolutely love seeing that. Don't know much about our other assistant, but if it's good enough for Coach Ari, it's good enough for me, right? Who the hell am I to have any freaking opinion on volleyball and coaching? She's forgotten more than I'll ever know about volleyball, and Coach Ari is just so utterly awesomely transparent that I feel like you could just ask her and she would give you the 100% like unfiltered truth about why she makes the moves that she makes. So anybody that Coach Ari puts a stamp on, I'll put a stamp on too. I love it.
Yeah, and Coach Ari put out a statement here that I'm trying to bring up, and it was about how lucky she was to get her. I'm trying to get that, but it was one of these. She is a head coach before at a lower level, Catholic University. She was head coach of the 17 and under elites or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to be said, I think, when you bring in as an assistant a head coach from another level, to where you have someone that has recruited and put together a team. They have known how to maintain a roster of players. And this is any sport that I'm talking about. But having that head coaching experience, I think, plays a lot when you are an assistant. Um, Caitlin Gaylor, I've told this story many times on here, but in our house, she's referred to as the other Caitlin
Mm-hmm.
because my oldest daughter, Caitlin, called her that. She had her last year in at the rec, is where we do our summer daycare for Caitlin, and she had her 2 years in a row at the volleyball camp, and then taught to her over at softball and that sort of thing. So Caitlin Gaylor is known in this household as the other Caitlin. So, other Caitlin, we are very happy for you in this newly ascended role, and the volleyball staff in general.
Yeah. CUA. I'm looking at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
is where Coach Heather Stout came from. I finally got the article to load. It did not want to load.
Yeah, there was a thing, but she was coach of the year a few years ago. I mean, I looked up her bio. There's a lot to be said for, again, someone that has head coaching experience at a great level, even if it's a lower level, but they have um, a
Wow.
good record.
Hey, check this. I didn't. Neither one of us caught this, but I'm reading, that statement, and Coach Ari says of Coach Stout that
Mm-hmm.
she said, "We're lucky to have found Heather and to have her excitement for the program. In our process, I wanted to make sure we found the right fit and a person who I knew would make an immediate impact on the program while having the core values that we live by in this program. Her uncle played football here. How
Is
about
it
that?
is it Juan Stout?
I don't know. It said her uncle played football here, so she understood the passion, history, and tradition of Marshall. And as a sitting head coach, she has proven her success and operates the right way. Her passion for the student athlete and their experience, along with her level of success, is something I knew we needed within our program. How about that? Her uncle played football here. I wonder who
Uh,
that is. We'll have to dig into that.
well, I'm guessing that it's Juan Stout.
That could be.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be.
I'm gonna have to ask him, but
Yeah. Pretty cool connection.
yeah. All right, so our next thing that we are going to is finally done with the coaches. Let's talk about some players. Tyler Jones is all Sunbelt Conference first team for men's golf, and Ryan Bilby is second team.
Shocker. Utterly shocked. I mean, what do you have to say? These guys performed all year long. Obviously, they performed at a high level all year long. Tyler Jones is just who Tyler Jones is. Best golfer on the Marshall roster. Ryan Bilby right there behind him. And this will be Bilby's team moving forward, because Tyler is finally, I think, to the delight of other Sunbelt golfers, Tyler is finally going to be exhausting eligibility, but well deserved for both those guys, and totally not surprising.
Number 7 to finish us up here, Brooklyn Ulrich and Bella Gerlach finished the regular season tied for runs batted in the Sun Belt Conference. I've got a little bit more here about Brooklyn, but let's talk about that going forward.
I'm not sure that I thought that would have happened. Obviously you think, oh, well, you have a good shot of having the Sunbelt RBI leader, just as any other team does at the beginning of the season. But I don't think you would have said you're going to have two that tie to lead the conference, because that's just a wild thing. Like, who would have thought you would have landed on the same number of RBIs throughout the season and would have played for the same team, right? Because you're in direct competition with one another to bat in those runs. so it's really a difficult thing to do. You would think that one of them would just be in the position to do that more, to steal those RBIs away from, you know what I mean? It's just a wild thing, but so cool nonetheless. So 2 years running, Marshall has the RBI leader in the Sun Belt Conference. And I love to use Bella as the example that you can call back to when you say you can't take stats into account when a transfer portal player comes in. I love to do that because here she is leading, co-leader of the Sun Belt in RBIs, led in home runs for a good good part of the season. And when we talked about her coming in from Western Michigan, the stats just weren't there, you know. So that's a great reminder to Herd fans for any sport, any athlete, that you just can't. That can't be. You can't directly correlate what they did at spot A with the new stop. But I don't know. I'm going to call back to this also. In the spring game weekend, we had the tailgate, and we got to talk to Brooklyn for a minute. Well, at least I did. I don't know what you were doing. You were probably talking to anyone, but I was talking to Brooklyn there for a second, and I asked about if there was a friendly competition between them two, because at that time it was for the home run lead, and she was like, "Oh no, we're like best friends." She's like, "This is like we have a great relationship, so this is not like a competition." And I'm like, "That's not what I meant." I'm like, "Are you guys like talking shit to one another, like I'm going to end up with that home run crowd or the crown, or I'm going to end up with that RBI crown?" And she was like, "No, this is like we're just trying to, both win." You know what I mean? Like we're pushing each other to achieve. So the even the relationship that's not talked about between those two is something that I know firsthand is there, because Brooklyn told me that, "No, man, we push each other to be the best that we can be, and we want to outdo one another." And what a way it's turned out. Co-leaders in the Sun Belt in RBIs. I haven't looked at the stats, but I would be shocked if they're not amongst the top 2 or 3 in home runs, right? I don't know if anybody's overtaken them or anything like that, but just a great season. Bella was such a great ad. Brooklyn really took off this year. She performed well last year, but she really took off from a power standpoint this year. Man, this is what I'm talking about. Marshall might not be where you want them to be from a wins and losses standpoint. And I know Coach Circle's not where she wants to be in wins and losses from a wins and losses standpoint in year one, but individual player development, individual pieces to the puzzle are really taking a stride to where next year, the year after that, Marshall could really be dangerous. And it's not just Bella, and it's not just Brooklyn. Abby Darnley's coming along really, really well. Bub Faringa, we know what Bub's been doing this year. Really, really developed from inside the circle, and of course continued her threat from the plate, and other players too. We'll talk about that more when we start talking about the tournament a little bit. But great accolade, great little asterisk point there for the season for the Herd.
Well, why don't I just expand on that? Like I said, I've got some info here. Our friend of the ThunderCast, Scott Hall, who was in the sports information director banner there for the longest time for softball, he's probably the authority that I would go to for Marshall softball to talk stats and that sort of thing, because you remember we talked about him having 1,000 different games that he called for Marshall, and then he had a little bit before them before he moved on. All right, during the regular season this year, that is, her season is not over. She can still add to these in the postseason. One of only 4 players, Brooklyn Ulrich, in history to have 60-plus hits, 40-plus runs, and 30-plus extra base hits in a season here at Marshall. Amanda Williams in 2006, Rachel Folden in 2008, and Shaylin Braxton in 2014.
Yeah. Super rarefied air. And I know, you narrow that down to 4 people, and that's only across 3 categories. And I bet if he added a few more categories,
she's one of one.
You could probably get her to be one of one.
Yeah.
You might be able to just toss on the RBI production right now and get it down to a 1 of 1 in a season. I don't know, but I don't care. 3 categories is all it is, and you become 1 of 4 all time. And those are some all-time names.
Well, what's Rachel Folden doing right now? I mean, come on.
She's just only a hitting coach in the Cubs organization, but no big deal, right? So it's one of those things. Like, Brooklyn has flown under the radar for a lot of people, and she flew under the radar and was overshadowed by production numbers last year because what Autumn Owen was doing from the plate and what Sid Nestor was doing in the circle, and these big eye-popping things were happening. But yet there was Brooklyn still producing, still playing solid defensive second base, still just doing her job and out there finding the base path so she could be, circle the bases and be an RBI for someone. And then this year, it became a little bit more of her show. She became a bigger part of the offense, just as integral part of the defense. And now she finds herself with still games to play, at least one game to play, able to tack on to these season numbers. 23, 24, I guess 24, has really just been a career year for her. And she's not done. Like she's not done. She has time left with the Herd. She'll be a bigger part of what we're trying to do next year. And again, I say this a lot about a lot of our athletes. She's just really easy to cheer for. She just really is. All of those softball girls are easy to cheer for, because of how interactive they are with the fans and, all that kind of stuff. They're just really, really easy to cheer for. And I wish I could say it's been a pleasant surprise, but it's not a surprise. I was expecting this type of year for Brooklyn based on what we saw last year.
All right. Well, let's talk about last year versus this year. And she was pinch hit for a lot late in games last year. She only had 95 at bats over 44 games last year. 179 batting average.
Yeah. She'll be the first to tell you she struggled.
248 on base. 326 slugging. Overall, the OPS is 574. She had a total of 7 extra base hits, 3 doubles, 3 homers, and 1 triple. This year, 52 extra base hits, 400 average, 440 on base, a slugging of 752, an OPS of 1191. Wow, what a turnaround, crushing it. And I know you weren't saying because of, you expected her to have the exact same stats like she had those stats last year, but the work that she put in last year and sticking with this and everything. I've had talks with her parents, other parents out there that know softball, that know hitting, and they're talking about her swing right now. She is dialed in, locked in with what she's doing. It has been a magical, magical year this year for Brooklyn.
Well, what that tells me is that she has found consistency in her swing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're talking about when she's kind of entered the zone. She has just found her swing. Like she's not trying to tweak it anymore, not trying to work this out. She's found what's working for her. The coaches have unlocked the lock a little bit more, and it's just allowed her to break out. I mean, look at that. Look at you said 50 some extra base hits. I'm not sure you need to add the RBI category in there. You might just be able to push that extra base hit total up from 40 to 50 and see if you knock down that list from 4 to 2 or 3 maybe. But I don't care. Any way you want to look at it, she's had a great season, and she's got an opportunity to make some noise in the Sun Belt Conference tournament.
I'm sorry, I said 52. That's what was killing me. It's 32.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, because the category that we got to get them down to 4 extra base hits was 30 plus extra base hits. And you said that, and I'm like, how could that be when that's the category?
That's what you said.
I said 19 plus 13 is totally not 52. I don't know what I was doing there, but
it's all good.
First mistake I'm ever going to make on this show.
It's been a while. It's actually been a while. We actually strung together some episodes where we didn't screw something up and have to apologize. Damn it. We were rolling.
Yeah. We'll get them next time. All right. That ends our 7 things every Herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by Ignite League.
Well, let me sum it up for you. A lot of coaching news, a lot of SBC accolades, and that's really about it. It's tournament time. So what do you got? Where are we going next?
Well, as we have been prone to do, we are going to talk about football transfer portal stuff. It's not a full-length feature, but we've got some news on there. I'll tell you who over the last week week and a half has entered. You know that the transfer portal is now officially closed. And there were some people that snuck in on that last day and got in here. And we had somebody that has come in already. I'll preface this by saying, and I made a tweet about this, it is always, you're going to see more people enter the portal before you see more people come in here. It's a necessity. It has to happen. One, as I said, you have to have a roster spot available. You can't just bring these people in and hope someone enters the portal. So you have to wait until some of these spots open up by people entering. Number two, people have to have time to enter the portal before they can come here.
You can't come out of the portal unless you go in.
Yeah. So you're going to see a lot more people enter from your team before you start getting people transferring in. So here's who we got out: Will Norman, Barrett Maddox, Lloyd Willis, Jason Harris, Jonathan Perkins, in J.J. Hawkins. That's the movement on top of what we've already talked about on the show.
Yeah. What is that, 5? Is that you just named?
5 out, 1 in.
Okay, so that. Obviously, that's not going to sustain. Now that, of course, this also doesn't cover grad transfers. Grad transfers can go anytime, right?
No, I said that, and I got corrected. That is one of those things, the new rule that slid under the radar. They have to do. I thought they had, if they graduated this summer, they could still do it. They have to do it before whatever it is closest to that transfer window.
Okay.
So even people that are graduating like this month or whatever, they had to enter on that April 30th date as well.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, I guess. But we all know that you can still make movement over the summer. There will be time. There will be time. We've seen it. So,
the new rule, I think, just went in this semester when they redid those rules and everything. The court cases that ruled over some of the things, I got a link sent to it that explained it from one of the transfer portals, and there is no more over the summer like it was previously.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Because I thought the same thing that you just did, because there are people that can take classes and graduate this summer in between fall camp and the close of spring camp and the close of this transfer portal. And it was that those players could enter. But what I got sent that corrected me said differently, and it's a new ruling.
Well, okay. So that changes things a little bit. I mean, it helps a little bit, I think. If you're the program, it helps. It's not necessarily super helpful to the individual player, but it just causes you to have to plan a little bit better, I guess, if you're thinking you want to hit the portal. But never mind all of that. What I was getting at is that's 5 out, 1 in. That's what you're going to see. Now you're going to start to see that flip a little bit, because guys are in. Now they're going to start weighing their options. They're going to start seeing about fit. They're going to all that kind of stuff, and you'll start to see more guys enter the program. So there's no need to get up in a tizzy every time there's a portal window. And every single time there's a portal window, we have fans that get all up in a tizzy. They must know something that we don't know. What's going on in Huntington? It's like, dude, there's 100 and some freaking schools that this is happening at. It's nothing happening in Huntington. It's happening everywhere. Like, golly, you got to stop hanging on every single entering the transfer portal tweet.
Let me tell you how recent this was and why we have missed this. This came out, the legislation passed during the time that the transfer portal was open.
Ooh, okay.
The week of, right in the middle. Like, it was open for 15 days, the 15th through the 30th or whatever, or 16th through the 30th. It happened like the 20th is when this came out. The 20th through the 24th, somewhere through there, the legislation was passed down, and it is that for their respective sports, that final transfer window is when they have to do it. So that's why we didn't know about this, because unless you're getting notifications on every single daggone legislation change and lawsuit that's going through on this, or, you see it on Twitter, you see it on social media somehow, and you get it. I mean, I missed it. You missed it.
Yeah. I wouldn't
Uh,
have caught it. I mean, I would like to think that only the compliance officers are catching it,
yeah.
to relay the info. But dang, that's like that's kind of wild. I would have expected them to say, okay, this goes into effect the next portal window.
Yeah.
But okay, okay. So there's other stuff that I know we're talking about the portal right now, and but there's other stuff that folks need to be paying attention to that's happening legislatively as well.
Mhm.
The College Football Players Association and all these things that they are, I don't know, that's working its way through the government or the NCAA or whatever. Some pretty landmark type of stuff. So it's something to pay attention to. I'm not going to talk about it because there's nothing been set in stone right now. It's all just about like, what one side would like to have happen versus what the other side would like to have happen. So you could make a weekly show on just the goings on of those particular issues. But if you haven't heard about any of it, you might want to at least brush up on what's going on, what's being talked about. So, but in the coming years, and really in short order, maybe within the next, say, year or so, the rules could look vastly different, or terms and definitions or things like that could look vastly different than what they do now. But we've said repeatedly and will continue to say there has to be a middle ground to where players have flexibility to make decisions that they need to make, but also keep from gutting these institutions who are spending money to recruit them, and they're here for a year and then they're gone, and because that's just bad for the sport. Never mind an individual school. Yeah, we're Marshall biased and we want to see what's best for the herd, but it's killing a lot of what people love about college football. The argument that I hear the most is, I don't even know who our players are anymore. I don't know who to cheer for, because as soon as I get a favorite or choose someone that I want to be a favorite, they enter the portal. And that's at a very basal level is what will turn off a lot of fans to this sport. So there's got to be something to find some middle ground. And whether that means, you know, contracts like, multi-year scholarship contracts. So you have to be there, or else there's some type of, payback that has to go to the school or something. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying the current system is not good for the sport at all. It is not good. And I don't want to necessarily inhibit players from making decisions they need to make. But just to jump for the sake of jumping, the grass is greener scenario all the time, that ain't good.
Well, and exactly what you were talking about is this last show we talked about 3 of 4 or 4 of 5 were players that had came in the previous year, transferred in, and then were transferring back out. So let's talk about these 5 that
Yeah.
transferred out real quick. And I'm going to go by playing time in descending order, and you'll get the joke here in a second. Lloyd Willis transferred in last year. He started in 9 games, played in 12 of them. He leads these people, and everyone else is tied for second with 0.
Right.
Jonathan Perkins came here last year but did not play. Um, Will Norman, Barrett Maddox, and Jason Harris, they came here in December to January of this year. We're here for spring practice, and they're already gone. They
Right.
were not here on last year whatsoever. They came in December's or they entered the transfer portal in December. They came here either in December or January, and they already got back in it in April. That's 3 players that came in this class that left in this class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something's got to be done.
Yeah. It's got to be done. It's bad enough when it's a year,
Yeah.
but it's horrendous when it's like signed in January, enters the portal in April.
Yeah, 3 months, and I mean that's not during a season. You came here for spring practice. Um, you know, they had to have enrolled. I don't see how they could have been in the
Right.
transfer portal if they didn't enroll. So they came here, they enrolled, they were here for a semester. Now I've always said, once a son of Marshall, always a son of Marshall. I can't say that for 3 people that never And I'm not counting Jonathan Perkins. He was here for a full year and that sort of thing. But those three that I just mentioned were here only for spring practice.
Yeah.
You know,
Never
they
put
were
on a game jersey.
never on a roster, of any kind. I can't say, they basically came here and then they said either, hey, I've got a better offer somewhere, or hey, I don't think that I'm going to start how I'd want to here, so I'm going to
Yeah.
leave. I
Yeah.
don't know, but whatever it is, I can't really get behind those three and say once a son of Marshall, always a son of Marshall, because I feel like they weren't really a son of Marshall just to sign here and then leave.
So, and again, when I say these things, I'm not talking about these particular three guys or any one particular guy or even anybody that goes to our school or anything. It's the idea that I'm talking about here,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
Because what you hear a lot is I really I don't let me think of what I want how I want to say it. I don't respect words. I respect things like loyalty. That's important to me. That you hear that a lot across, the sports world. And then you have things like some of the same people that say stuff like that are doing things like this. They go to a school, they're there for a couple of months, and then they're gone. Like, do you really respect loyalty though? Because they took a chance on a school took a chance on you or gave you an opportunity, not took a chance, but they gave you an opportunity. And that opportunity either wasn't everything you thought it was going to be, or you just don't like it. And you're not showing any loyalty to that institution that gave you an opportunity. Now, that's not exclusive to Marshall. It's happening all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like that's the narrative. Like I value loyalty. No, I think you might value one-sided loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
You want somebody to give you an opportunity, but you don't want to, you know, hold up your end of the bargain if it gets a little too, if it's not just, well, this isn't the way I thought it was going to be. And again, I don't know the right answer. I really don't. I was never a Division I athlete. So to a certain degree, it's easy for me to sit up here and say coulda, shoulda, woulda. But I also, had I been a Division I athlete, would have come up in an era to where you couldn't do this. You would have kind of been forced to, you know, work your way up or transfer out and sit a year. That wasn't necessarily the right way to do it, but it's just too easy. It's too easy to pack it in and just look for the easier situation or whatever. And I don't know, man. It gets really, really tiresome to talk about this sort of thing. It's bad enough when it's 1 year, but when it's 2 or 3 months, it just sucks. And I get why fans are starting to get bitter about it. They don't schools like Marshall. They used to know damn near everybody that was on the roster. They could tell you something about every guy on the roster, or a vast majority of them. Or the informed fan could tell you, like, this is going to be our 2 deep, or this is, the 3 deep, or whatever. They knew the roster, and now it's too much work. They can't keep up with it. It's a full-time job to try to keep up with the roster, and that will tear at the fabric of fandom of college football, particularly for small schools. When a true college town, that's the only game in town. In Huntington, that's what is going on is Marshall athletics. And when you start to erode that type of fabric away, fans just get turned off. They do. And I can't say that I blame them. They really want to love their team, but they got to know who's on the team for them to be able to love. Like, I love the logo on the helmet. I love the jersey. I'll cheer for the guys that are playing underneath that equipment, but I cheer for the herd, right? But at the same time, I'd like to know who the hell I'm cheering for. That would just be great.
It's getting back to that old 1920s through 1940s hawking of the programs in Major League Baseball. Can't tell the players without a program. Well, you sure
Yeah.
as hell can't anymore.
Yeah.
Because, people are coming in January and leaving in April.
And it's not just
It's
here. That's
not
what I'm
just
saying.
here.
It's just bad. That's a bad thing for the sport, man. So I don't know. I don't know, but it feels like a multi-year commitment is what you need to have, right? At least. And but then you get back into, hardships. And that's kind of the thing that eliminated a hardship. And, you could just transfer whenever you wanted to. You didn't have to file any paperwork and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But what we've got is not the answer.
Well, let's talk real quick and then move on. JJ Hawkins, defensive end. He's coming in here and he's played at Colorado last
Coming in
year.
from Colorado, yeah.
He before that was at Ole Miss. He got in 10 games in Colorado last year. Had stats in 4 of those games. Had 5 overall tackles. Nothing eye popping as far as like sacks and things like that. Just had 3 unassisted tackles, 2 assisted. Uh, don't know how many games he started. I didn't get into all that. I just know that he played in 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
He was good enough at Ole Miss to get 3 different SEC offers. He settled on Ole Miss. He played there. He had a redshirt year, and then he played 1 year, and then he played 1 year at Colorado. So he's got 2 years remaining for us if he stays the full 2 years. But good size, great prospect at one time. Maybe one of those guys that, just like we were talking about with Bella Gerlach, just needs to have that change of scenery, that program, that role, to where his talents meets up with his uh, expectations, I guess, up to this point.
Yeah, there's some positivities that you can look at, right? You can go, okay, been through an SEC strength program twice, went to Boulder and followed, came under Coach Prime. Whatever, however your feelings are about that situation in Colorado is what it is. But they're no stranger to mass exoduses from the portal too. I don't have any knowledge of the situation in Boulder. I don't have a freaking opinion of what is going on in Boulder. But all I know is these are schools with big resources that have infrastructure in place to help develop a player, so that schools like Marshall, if they are the right fit for guys, we become the benefactors of those 2 to 3 years of development. Now, whether it translates on the field, that will have to play out in real time in the season. But for now, welcome to the herd.
Well, that's it for the transfer portal. Again, KD mentioned it at the top of the program, but if you really, really want a close look at the goings on and remind yourself of who left after last season finished and who has come in and who has come in and then departed, you can find that over at ThunderCast.online. It's now on the second page worth of articles. By the way, it's not just a bunch of articles there. Make sure that you go through. We've got a very good guide for when fans are coming to Huntington, or when Marshall fans themselves are coming down for a game, coming from elsewhere. A lot of different stuff over there. Give everything a shout, and it's got links to our socials and links to each of these episodes that we do.
Yeah, and of course, it's a good time to mention, since we're talking about the website, if you'd like to contribute to ThunderCast.online, you should DM us on Twitter or Facebook or wherever outlet you're on, and let us know, because Russ will spearhead that conversation and try to figure out what it is you want to do. And if we've got a place for it, then we'll get something worked out. But I recommend everyone bookmark ThunderCast.online, keep it as a tab on your phone, and check on it frequently. But you're right. A lot of good info there. We'll probably have to revisit that fan guide again and maybe do an updated version of that for this year. But that was fun. That was well received by visitors. They really like that. So seems to be a good opportunity to update that for the coming football season.
I already have a little bit that I'm working on that guide that I have not put on there yet. It's just linking another thing, and just because I don't have to pay for advertising on this show. It's my apartment that I rent out. We have already had player parents stay here, but if you're a fan, I know I've already had one of our listeners book us for homecoming. So got games coming up, reasons to come to Huntington. That will be on that list on that page.
All right, let's take her around the herd.
Yeah, around the herd, we are going to start off with women's basketball. You mentioned earlier we're starting to get some commits. We already got one from Cassie Ingram coming out of the Cincinnati area.
Mm-hmm. The first commit of the Julie Folks era. Pretty excited about that. It's nice to see. I'll tell you what I'm excited about. This is has nothing to do with her as a player. It's just the fact that the Twitter algorithm felt good enough about me to have that pushed to our timeline. I was like, man, we never see like women's basketball recruiting news, and I didn't have to go searching for that. So I appreciated that. That was just one of those cool things. I guess we've talked enough about women's herd basketball that well now they just send us stuff. But the Coach Folks is excited about this one. I'm excited for Cassie because hey man, you're the first recruit of the Coach Folks era. I've also seen that there are other prospects floating around, like putting up posts. They're taking visits. They're in Huntington or they've been in Huntington. It's not necessarily high school folks. It's portal players or JUCO players. So, like I said before, the momentum is starting to get into full swing. It's like Julie has gotten her feet under her now. She's settled in at Huntington, and now the work is starting to. We're starting to see some fruits of the labor.
Over on men's basketball, we have transfers coming in from an NAIA school, twins Cade Gibbs and Jacob Gibbs.
Yeah, I'd be
Now,
lying to you if I knew anything about them. So hopefully you've got some info.
just saying that both of them were in the 12 to 13 points per game kind of situation. They're both in the 6'3", 6'4" ish range, if I remember correctly, and are guards. One thing that we have always said, though, we said it last year with Cam Crawford, you can't just take points, plug them into the new place, but this is going to be definitely a bump up going from NAIA to D1 basketball.
Yeah, big rise in the level of competition. Now the Sun Belt, everybody will tell you that it's not where we want to be as far as quality of the league goes. But still a big step up in competition. And what I haven't seen, for the things I have seen, what I haven't seen is anybody who's in these basketball circles and talks about recruiting and all that kind of stuff. I haven't seen anybody say we've got our point guard. So that tells me that like that's still a piece of the puzzle. Like we're surrounding guards and some defenders with the pieces that we've got coming back, and it's like it at least from the circles of the people that are talking about it, we still need to find that floor general to make the whole thing work. So something to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, and this came in the article that they do a great job over on Herd Zone of this, but listen to this. They went to the NAIA Fab Four with a 34-2 record. The Gibbs twins, along with Elijah Malone, who transferred to Colorado. So it's not just that, hey, they're the only two players in the NAIA that are making a big leap. They led Grace College to a 66-5 record across the last two seasons. Right. So we talked about this before. Good players at good programs, good coaches at good programs. It's not like they have to learn how to play the game or learn how to coach the game.
Well, and another thing, right? We're talking about these guys having to play at a higher level of competition, but they're also going to be surrounded by better players, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes what they're able to do a little bit easier. And of course, you can't guarantee how anything will translate, but these are the same arguments that folks had, like, oh, well, how will Kim Caldwell do coming from Division II? Pretty damn good. Oh, well, how will Julie Folks do coming from Transylvania? Oh, hopefully pretty damn good. So you can't just, it's easy to take the naysayer route. It's easy to do that. But it's hard to take I don't know, not the positivity route, but like, you're willing to see what happens before you form an opinion. So, you surround guys. I think that guys like Nate Martin and Obina and probably Michael Dawson will allow these guys to elevate what they are able to do. It takes a lot of pressure off of what they needed to do at the current level where they were. But I feel bad for Grace College because 60% of their starting five at least moved on from a team that was obviously pretty damn good. So, could be some good additions to the herd. You can't say that Coach Jackson's not trying to assemble a quality team. He is, but ultimately, I think we're not done, right? We
Mhm.
cannot
Yeah,
be done,
right.
obviously. So once we get the final roster in place, then we'll start to dissect that.
And I undersold them on their height. I said 6'3", 6'4". It's 6'5", 6'6", and they play more the swing man role. One guard, one forward. But that was in that particular style of play. Don't know really how it'll translate here on if they'll play the wing, if they'll play shooting guard, that sort of thing. But 6'5", 6'6" is different than 6'3", 6'4".
Sure is.
All right. Next on the list, we have a couple of commitments, and there's never any really good news on these people, history on them. Women's soccer, Ebony Leckie and Larissa Osorio. So, not a lot of info out there except for where they come from. They are international players, and it just looks like we are finally hitting some news for Coach Samoa's team.
It feels like he's taking the blueprint that
Yeah.
was working for men's soccer and applying it to women's soccer. And this is very very much a rebuild. We know
Mm-hmm.
that. We know that, not only from a wins and losses standpoint for women's soccer, but roster movement.
Mm-hmm.
They lost quite a few players, and whether that was personal choice or strategic choice, we don't know. We'll never know, and I don't care to know. Regardless of the fact, it's a rebuild. And I've had fans come at me to say, like, this isn't a rebuild because they weren't any good. And I'm like, well, it is, though, because it's not a brand new team that we're starting up. Their team was there, so they just need to be rebuilt in the image of their coach. So that's what we're seeing. And I would expect to see far more of that. But getting two right off the gate, great start. It's a great start. Long way to go. We've got a long way to go. But if even marginally we see success on the women's side that we see on the men's side, it will not take very long to become a really competitive soccer team for the Herd women. I think that even though we talk about the facilities and how good they are, and I think they're quaint. Quaint is just a nice way to saying that. Well, yes, the men have outgrown it, but the women have not outgrown the facility yet. So you still have a top tier playing surface. You still have a top tier experience. So the facilities are a positive, but being able to directly, even though it's not the same program, to point to the success of the men's program and say, this is what we can do here. It proves that you can win in Huntington. And then when you have an assistant coach that is now the head coach that can actively recruit players and say, yeah, I was a part of what we did here on this national level of dominance. Uh, that's what lends me to think that we'll have a more successful program moving forward for the Herd women's soccer. But getting a two in the same week is pretty good. It had gotten quiet on the front there, women's soccer too, and maybe this is the start of the roster overhaul that we all know that we would need.
All right. Next on the list is track and field. The Sun Belt Conference Outdoor Championships will be Thursday through Saturday. We look to see quite a bit of hardware coming home with them based on all that we have seen on times leading the Sun Belt, top three in the Sun Belt, that sort of thing. But our usual suspect, Abby Herring, seems to be the favorite in at least two events.
Yeah, shocker. I'm glad that you were able to sneak in the name. I was worried that it wouldn't make it for the 58th millionth consecutive episode that we
Yeah.
talked about Abby Herring. But yeah, it's across both programs. We're expecting to see some performers from some hardware from both programs. We're expecting to see some people medal or whatever they call it in the Sun Belt Championships. And maybe we'll even sneak away with a team win in an event or something like that. But we've had some it's not just the runners. We've had some really solid performances late from the field athletes as well. So it's not just Abby and Kylie and Ronnie Saunders and Evan White and the usual. So there's some candidates or some prospects players out there that can surprise some people if given the opportunity. Let's not forget we still consider ourselves pole vault U. So I'm going to hope for a streak to continue there, but I really think that we'll see Abby bring home a couple. I think you have an opportunity to see Kylie bring home one or a couple, and Ronnie bring home one or maybe two. So um, now it's just wait and see. They've peaked at the right time. But even earlier in the year, it was like this time would be good enough for best in the Sun Belt right now. So, you'd be fooling yourself if you said that other athletes at other schools aren't also training to peak this week. They are.
Mm-hmm.
We know how ridiculously awesome that Arkansas State is at track and field, which still is. I mean, it's not funny to me, but it's just like what a. It's just not the school. I don't even know who the school is. I would think would be the track and field powerhouse. It's just not Arkansas State. So I mean, good for them. It just strikes me as weird. It'd be like, I don't know, like if Oklahoma State was a bowling powerhouse. It's like, really, I wouldn't think about that, but it is. But so we know what we're up against. But of a team concept, overall program concept, the women had a great finish from a team standings. What were they, like sixth or seventh last year in the fall, I think. Love to see that number go up even incrementally, and the men really need to take a step or two in the right direction from an overall team standings finish. But let's do it, man. Let's bring home some more hardware.
We mentioned Abby Herring, so I have to mention one of my favorite things that Marshall Athletics has done recently, and it's the parody of the "This Is Sports Center" commercial. Did you see it?
Oh, with yeah, I think I did in the Buck. Was it in the Buck Harless Center with Marco?
Started in the Buck and ended up down at the track in the indoor, and Marco types up, prints off, takes down the new record uh, for Abby Herring and takes it down to give to David O'Leary. And he says, "Thanks for printing this off, Marco." And the camera pans just a little bit, and Caleb Bowen has the timer. Abby Herring runs, and he goes, "It's a new record." And, they hand it back to Marco, who has to go back up, and he kicks over the trash can and, says, "This is Marshall Athletics." But, a great throwback to the "This Is Sports Center" commercials that you and I grew up on and loved so much.
They're great.
But it just shows every time that she runs, she's breaking another record. We make fun of it on this show because of how often it happens, and they are lampooning it here as well. And great. We've got some great guys over there, Stan and Rodney, and all these creative minds that what they're doing here. But Grant and David and Cody and the team, they're really putting together some good content, and that was one of them.
That's good. I hope that continues.
It says season 1, episode 1.
Yeah, so. I know, but I hope that they. I mean that takes a lot of creativity, right? So it's not something that like two guys are going to be able to come up with, 30 different type commercials for athletes across our athletic department. But I happen to know two really creative comedic minds that might be able to help with that if someone were to hit that DM button. Food for thought.
I can see it now, featuring Russ Livingood and the other guy. I can see it. All right, let's see here. Baseball lost to EKU on Tuesday, 12-5, and lost to them again on Wednesday, 2-1. But then they beat Georgia State on Friday, 6-5, with that killer walk-off bunt. And I'm not saying that I'm a bunt fan.
It was cool. It was cool.
I'm a bunt fan. If you got a guy on third and one out and you're needing a walk-off, that is probably one of the higher percentage things you can do if somebody executes. And they executed, and that was a great walk-off. 1-6-5. Then they come back the next day. behind Bryce Blevins on the mound. Don't know if he did or will get pitcher of the week. I don't think that's
I
been
think
out
it's been
yet.
out yet. Let me look.
But they won 9-1 on Saturday before losing the final game of the series 17-8 on Sunday. They are hosting Ohio on Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then they travel to James Madison for a weekend set. Friday 6 p.m., Saturday 6 p.m., and Sunday at 1 p.m.
Yeah. So first off, out of the gate, the Marshall or not Marshall, but Sunbelt baseball honors have not been posted yet. So we're setting on that. The cool thing is, leave it to Star Wars fans to do this. But Star Wars Day, May the 4th, Bryce Blevins on the mound. The whole thing. Number 8, BB8. It was awesome. That
Yeah.
like to have that come together. He sets a career high in strikeouts. Bryce Blevins, what a freaking shining star for the herd this year.
Yeah.
We've had guys that have performed in spots, like Owen Ayers having a really good season. Of course, everybody for this season is going to probably remember 2 or 3 things. And one of them is going to be Trey Hondras and the home run to open the jack. And one of the others is going to be the walk-off to beat West Virginia. And then the other is definitely going to be the season-long performance of Bryce Blevins. The guy is just smoking right now. And when is he going to cool down? Because it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Well, they got him the week before.
Yeah, but still.
But well, that's what I was going to say. Is like you start thinking of, okay, has the magic ran out, because they really, really got to him the week before, and then he comes back with a season high 11 strikeouts and just dominates on the mound again this year. And you think, well, yeah, you can't have every single week you go up and throw up a straight number of 1 given up. The odds are that you're going to get tagged one time. And he's still, his ERA, as much as he got tagged, it is still ridiculously low because he's just been consistent all year long.
Yeah, he really has. I'm just saying, I mean, I keep saying a bright spot, but that understates, it just understates what he's doing. It really does. And it's a travesty that he's pitched as well as he has and has a record of 3-3. His ERA is the lowest on the team by a long shot. I mean, almost a full run. His ERA is 2.59. He just continues to kill it. And you're right. You can't expect to go out and just throw a gem every time you go on the mound. That's impossible. The greatest pitchers in the world can't throw a gem every time they go out. There's just too many variables that go on in a baseball game, right? But to have sustained, to have been on a hot streak and then took a lick and then came back out and set a high in strikeouts the very next time on the mound tells you the magic ain't gone, right? So they got a little bit of work to do, little diamond edition battle for the bell going on, and then a series at James Madison. And I don't know, Marshall's season again hasn't panned out the way they want. Wins and losses are tough. It's just too many times where the herd bats disappear and the floodgates break open. That's happened in a lot of games. It really has. But there are some building blocks, and there have been some great moments. The season is not over, so all you need is an opportunity. And if Marshall can get an opportunity, then maybe they can make a little bit of noise. But I think in a nutshell, Bryce Blevins has been the brightest bright spot on this team for the season, for the duration of the season. But I'm with you also. Suicide Squeeze, awesome. That made its way around national media again, and baseball dudes are like, man, if you're a baseball guy, you got to love that. And I do. I love that. I mean, that takes cojones to try to pull off, and you have to pull it off. You have to do it.
Hey, me, I'll talk about my baseball accolades, whether they are made up or not. But I was a successful suicide squeeze bunter, and we did it over at Tug Valley. And it does take, because unless it's a wild pitch, you have to hit that daggone ball.
You gotta
You
hit. Gotta.
you got to make contact with it, or all of a sudden you don't get another chance. You don't get a chance for a sacrifice fly. You don't get a chance for a seeing eye single. That guy is out if you don't make contact. So couldn't really see in this one because I did not get to go to the game and they didn't show the camera angle. Couldn't tell if it was a full suicide squeeze or if it was a safety squeeze. But no matter what, it was executed absolutely perfectly. You want to be able to draw that catcher forward because a little bit too far and the pitcher can get it and throw it and get him out. Catcher had to leave the plate for his only chance of getting him. No chance to get the guy. He was safe by several feet. Very good execution. Love the balls that it took to call the play. Love the execution from everyone involved. Just a great, great performance all around to get that win.
Yeah, it sure was. And if you're Coach Beals, you're like, we want this one, and
Yeah.
now's our chance. We might not get another
Yep.
chance. So I was always the guy on the base path, like having to commit to running home no matter what, and it all has to work. It all has to work. Everybody, you mentioned safety squeeze, and that's a whole nother animal, but.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to commit. You know that I'm going to be out, or we're going to win this game. That's it. And it falls on you, so to speak, to make any sort of contact, please, any. But I loved that play being called as a base runner because you knew, like, I'm going to end it right here. I'm going to end it. We're going to go home. So that was always a fun moment. It didn't happen too many times. You're just not in that scenario too many times. But ballsy call. Props to Coach Beals for making that call, and the Herd escaped with a exciting win.
All right, softball. We ended up going down to Texas State and did not have a good time down there. We lost 5-1, 5-4, and 5-0. That ended the regular season, and now we are playing in the first round, which is Wednesday, May the 8th at 8 p.m., and we are playing at Texas State Stadium against Georgia State, Georgia Southern. I don't have it up, but that will be 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus, and it is losing you're out from here on out.
Yeah.
So every single game will be must watch, and we will definitely be putting that out on the timelines on social media of every single game from here until we're out.
Yeah, Marshall snuck in there. 10 seed, 10 get in, but you're in. Like I said, with baseball, you just need an opportunity, and now they have the opportunity, so it's going to fall on them. And we know that for everything that this tournament is about, the number one thing it is about is pitching. And that is, where Marshall has seen a decline versus last year. So it's going to take a lot of good luck. The bats are going to have to be out in a big, big way to offset the overall lack of pitching depth. It's not that the talent is not there. It's just the overall amount of depth that we have is not necessarily there. But if they get hot, I mean, hey, you go out and think about it. You get a couple of mercy rules. Well, that's far fewer pitches you have to throw. It's far fewer opportunities that you have, and you find yourself right in the thick of things. So the bats can help the Herd as well, but it ain't going to be an easy road to hoe for Marshall. The 10th seed just sneaking in is not necessarily where you want to be, but hey, it's better than not being in the tournament. So let's make a little noise. Let's get some little positive momentum here. Let's see if we can make us a little run and put this Herd in a position to win a championship, or at least make it through a couple of rounds of the tournament.
And being 10th and drawing number 7, Georgia Southern, I just went back and looked at what we did against them this year. I remember these games. 3-4 loss on a Friday, then came back and won 6-1 on Saturday, and then 9-1 in 6 innings on Sunday. That was back in March, and was there for those games, and we matched up pretty well with them. Let's hope that we have that magic again in this first round, give us an extra boost into the second.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about two really hot bats right now, and with Bella and Brooklyn, and we've seen games where Marshall has hit 4 and 5 home runs in a game, and it's out there. We know. I mean, what series was that not too long ago where they put up like 41 runs or 31 runs and 40 hits in a weekend series? That wasn't that long ago.
That was last week.
Oh, okay. So I see. So it's just that's what needs to continue. That's all. That's what needs to continue.
Yeah, against App State, we had 31 runs in 3 games.
Yeah.
Won the last game 18-12, but we were up something like 12-1 or 12-2. I think it's 12-1. We were up after 3 innings. So we have the ability to do it. We just have to have that timely pitching performance to limit those and the defensive errors not to bite us to where we don't give up that big inning.
Yeah.
And that's what it's been happening. It's not been a bad pitching from the start to the end of a game. It's been that one big inning where we just can't stop the bleeding that we end up losing the game.
Yeah. So do you got anything else?
That is it for me, sir.
All right. I got one more thing that's fresh off of the timeline here that is Marshall baseball related. Tri-State Coal Cats, will be opening their season in a little under a month. They've announced some players that are going to be on the opening day roster. They've announced 5. 3 of them, of course, are from the Herd, and they are the aforementioned pitcher Bryce Blevins, pitcher Peyton Jackson, and infielder Jack Smith, all part of the opening day roster for the Coal Cats. You can expect a few more names to trickle in. There are a couple of WVU players that are also added to the initial 5 that are released just now. If you're concerned, it's pitcher Drew Calloway and infielder Spencer Barnett. So there's 5 of your, I don't know how many they're going to have on this roster, but you'll get to see Bryce Blevins pitch at the Jack a little bit more this season, over the summer, not this season.
Speaking of the Coal Cats, also yesterday, it doesn't involve Marshall at all, but it is local sports. KJ Hallgren is the 4th coach that has been announced on the staff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool, man. The Coal Cats, however you feel about the name, whatever. It's going to be something really fun to do this summer in Huntington, West Virginia. It's going to be a cheap activity. It's going to be a great place to go drink a couple of beers and watch some baseball. So now you'll get to go watch some of the Herd's young talent go, and we know some of those. Do you remember how many they said you could have? Was it 4 players or 5 players that
for the team?
Yeah, that
Marshall.
Could come from, yeah.
To my knowledge, 3 is it because
okay.
we had other players that wanted to play and had to go play elsewhere, including one in particular that I talked to is actually going to be playing in Harrisonburg, right where JMU's at, and is not going to get to play here because those limits had been reached.
Okay, so I thought it was 4 or 5, but 3 works, and you now know who the 3 are.
And also, well, maybe it's more than that, and they've only announced 3 so far. I would assume that they would announce everybody from Marshall that was going to be on there in one swoop. I also mentioned KJ Hallgren, but Roger Hill was named the hitting coach also this week. That happened after we had our previous show.
All right, so cool. Be looking forward to some Coal Cats tickets, not from us, but just to go on sale. So if you got nothing else, dude, take us out of here.
Yeah, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Jack, or whether you see us cheering on softball and track and field these next couple of days, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It is the ThunderCast. We will see you next week. Later.